Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening. What an awesome clip there. Probably before my time. I can't even. Oh, I remember the red car. But welcome to, I think it's the 21st episode of Motor Talk with Witzenberg, and tonight we have an unusual lineup because single-seater racing is not very well, I shouldn't say well respected, but very few people actually know what it takes to become a good single-seater driver. And tonight on the show, we have none other than Ashfaak, Dawood, and Rob Eloff, a formidable team called, they formed a team a while back called ERA Racing. And, we're just honored to have them on the show tonight. And to the viewers out there, the guys sitting in their beds and watching, that's probably the best place to be, on your cell phone, sitting in your bed, because it's icy cold outside. And we're just glad to be here. Hello, Rob, and welcome to our show.
Yes, good evening. Welcome. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you. I'm not sure what happened to Ashfaak. I actually almost forgot about Byron, my co-host there. Byron always does the honors. I thought maybe he was busy trying to get Ashfaak out of bed there or somewhere. How's it, Byron?
All good, thanks, Abdul. Hope you're well as well.
I'm really, really good, Byron. And just before the show, we're talking how cold it is. I'm not exactly sure how cold it is, but it is quite cold. But what can I say? We're going to take the hot with the cold, eh? I don't know if has Ashfaak come back yet.
Not yet. Still having a few technical issues as we speak, but hopefully he can find the sound on his computer or get onto a cell phone and join us because I'm still smiling from that video. The intro video that we played now. It's what dreams are made of, and also as well, you see in the earlier part of the video how difficult single-seaters are to drive as well, and it just shows you that it takes some good time just to get up and running and everything, and some beautiful shots around our home here, our circuit here, Cape Town.
Absolutely. Rob, Ashfaak has always insisted I must come and drive a single-seater, and I always steered away from it because I'm a turn-top guy. And I think one day I did this, there was those Dodge, those V6s or something, they used to have it with, I don't know, Fantastic Racing or something, I'm not too sure. Yeah, right. Yeah. And I actually drove one of those, but they were obviously detuned. But it's a very different ball game to drive a single-seater and an open top. Eventually I started enjoying it because it was so cool. But it was just very different. So maybe I'll take Ashfaak up and then offer one day to come and test drive one of those single-seaters over there.
Hi, guys.
You're back.
Wonderful, you got sound.
Finally.
I know who fixed that.
Sorry.
I know who fixed that.
Yeah, his daughter or his wife, one of the two, not Ashfaak.
my boss.
Your boss, okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad she allowed you to come onto the show tonight, Ashfaak.
I had to beg, borrow, and make promises.
Yeah, well, you got to just keep your promises. So, you missed. I don't know if you saw the opening clip, but it was awesome. But anyhow,
no, I actually didn't. You want to play it again?
No, we'll play later on. We play later on in the show.
You weren't in there, Ash.
It was Rob teaching you how to drive, actually.
Oh, okay.
It was Spinner Bishop and myself. Whoever remembers Spinner Bishop.
Yes. And did you tell him what your nickname was, Rob?
My nickname?
Rooster.
I don't know where that came from.
Explain that one.
I don't know where that came from.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, so you know what? We really know a lot about both of your guys' illustrious careers because you guys were really good at driving single-seaters. But we don't know much about ERA racing. We don't know much about setting up the single-seater cars. And I was a couple of times I was in the workshop there, the garage at Killarney, where you guys are busy building the Audi. And I was just absolutely in awe of what I see there every time I go, because everything is like really, really precise. And Ashfaak always tells me, no, Rob wasn't happy with that wire. The wire wasn't straight. I said, okay. Rob wasn't happy with that because that thing wasn't straight. And you know what? That at the end of the day is what makes racing successful, is your preparation, before. The driving is like just there, but it's important, obviously. But I just want you guys, maybe Rob, you can start off. What did you do before single-seaters? And how long ago was that?
Well, let me start off with something way back when I was at school. I went to school with a guy called Greg Wheeler. Now, Greg he was Jos Verstappen and Ralph Schumacher's race engineer. Now, Greg and I used to race bikes together in the old days in the East Rand, where I grew up at a flying school. My folks were based at the Not Flying School. And then Greg went to varsity, and then he went over to Australia, and then eventually he went to work for Williams and for somebody else. Arrows, yeah. And I went into the Air Force, and I was in there for 7 years. And when I was in the Air Force, I started to race motocross, and that's when I started racing motocross at this track in the old days. And I mean, that was my first race, I think, was in since 1979. I was a member there, and then I left.
I wasn't born yet.
And then I went to Sun City, and I worked at Sun City, and I got involved with enduros there. And eventually, when I started my business in Cape Town, I met Ashfaak, and Formula Ford in those days. It was called Western Province Formula Ford in those days. They raced nationals and regionals, and I did regionals with Ashfaak, and he did nationals, and it collapsed. I think for 2 or 3 years we had no racing in Cape Town, and then Armin approached us, and we discussed this. We had a whole lot of chassis, and he said, "Let's speak to Dennis and ask Dennis if he'll accommodate us in 2001," which he did. And I've still got the original documentation of the first minutes of the meeting, and that's how we actually started, or Armin started Formula Libre. And we had all these chassis, and I think the first race, or the first entry list, was over 20 entries, and 10 of them were Formula Vs and 10 of them were Formula Fords, no GTIs. And that's basically how it started. And then we just, it was Ashfaak asked me not to race because I was better than him, and he pays me 50 Rand a month not to race. So it was one of those things. But he's far better on the track than what I am. And when I used to race, I found it very difficult to work on the car and to race at the same time. Because most of the time you get into the car, you're strapping yourself in, your hands are dirty, you're putting on new gloves, you tell your wife to check the wheel nuts, have you done this, have you done that? It doesn't work. It does when you're young, I suppose, but for me, eventually it reached a point where it wasn't practical because I didn't have anybody helping me on the car. And it worked perfectly for Ashfaak and myself, because he was a perfect partner, and he still is, in doing that, because we communicate very well. And the type of language he speaks, I understand perfectly from a technical point of view.
Yeah.
And no matter what that chassis does, if Ashfaak can feel it, and he does because he's very good, he can feel the car underneath him. He knows how to explain it to me, and from that we can adjust the chassis to get it to handle differently. And I mean, if you think about it, the Formula 4's got over 12 rose joints per corner. And if any of those rose joints are out by 1 turn or 2 turns, the car will be different to the driver, not to me. He'll complain to me. But you got all that adjustment on the single seater, which is unbelievable. It's fantastic, especially for someone who wants to learn about the technical aspects of suspension and handling. And for any youngster that wants to get involved with motorsport, I would certainly recommend single seaters, because you can see the suspension, you can adjust it, and you can see the results from a driving output point of view. And I could never get that feel from a motorbike into a single seater. I could never get that. You know what I'm talking about, Ashfaak, that feel. You get it through your spine when the car talks to you. People might think it's crazy, but it's like a motorbike. A guy can do strange things on a motorbike because he can feel the chassis. Where Ashfaak's very good with the chassis, he can feel it through his spine. He'll know exactly what the car's doing, and he'll drive around whatever problems he's got. And that's what makes him so good.
Amazing. Ashfaak, how did you actually meet up with Rob? I mean, we heard Rob was telling his part of the story, but I mean, how did you end up in racing actually?
Well, we met at the racetrack. Rob, both of us, Rob and I, we both raced Merlins in Formula Ford. I started, I think, a year or two before Rob started racing, actually, also. So, Rob's attention to detail, if you saw Rob's Merlin and my Merlin, they were like space age and dinosaur. That was the difference, So, and then obviously because it was Merlins, we used to race and we were always quite close to each other on the track, most of the time me ahead of him. And, but, and I must say this, whenever it rained, Rob never raced because he was afraid of his car getting dirty. Anyway, so we built up a good friendship, on the racetrack, and then from a business perspective, also Rob runs a company called Eloff Transformers, and I was in electronics at Communica when we started with Communica. So besides racing, we also did business together. And that's how our friendship grew. So we kind of spoke the same language. And, when the opportunity came for us to team up, I remember Rob walking into my office one day and said, "You know what? I think you and I need to team up. You drive, I'll prepare the car." And that's when I said, "Okay, it sounds like a good idea." And I asked him how much is he going to pay me. Till today, I'm still waiting for the payment. But that's how it is. And it's so much easier when you working with someone, especially as a driver, where he understands exactly what you're saying. The communication is not a barrier. It makes your focus as a driver so much easier. Like, for me, it's so easy to jump into a car when Rob works on it, because I know I don't have to worry about anything, an accelerator cable jamming flat out, or the brakes going, or suspension going. Look, I mean, normal wear and tear, it's racing, things happen, but in general, you jump into a car with a clear mind, and that's what you need. You there to focus on extracting the best in your performance and in the car's performance. So that's how Rob and I got
So
going.
so both of you were from an electronics background. So were you telling me that the relationship was electrifying?
Well, it was in Rob's case, it was transforming.
Oh, okay.
All these years, we've never ever disagreed on an issue, ever, or argued about anything, ever. And I'm trying to think why. That's not right. You've got to argue sometime, but I don't recall Ash ever arguing about something. Or maybe one or two issues, but I used to punish him for that because I'm older. So I'm allowed to do that, where I used to sometimes he'd come late on race day, and then I'd go to the clerk of the course and say, "Would you mind if Ashfaak starts in the pit lane for the first heat?" And then even though he qualified first, the clerk would call him and say, "You're starting in pit lane because you were rude to Rob or something, or you were late or something." So that's the type of relationship we had. And then Ash, I would just say, "Go out and catch the guys and do your thing." And he would do that. And it was, and we still do that today. I mean, I still do those things today.
Byron, we actually forgot to talk about, sorry, Ashfaak, Byron, we forgot to talk about our sponsors there, and I see there's a whole lot of comments that you must maybe try and get through quickly.
Yeah, first of all, of course, a big thank you to 435 Oils and BH Media with Bevan Harris. Of course, he's the man who puts all the graphics together and all the videos and everything like that for the intro. And always a big thanks to him every single time coming through for us. But going through to some of the comments, we have two major commenters here. The first one is a man that's been very well known in Kalani for single-seaters, Formula M and into the Formula Libre. DJ Boyson says, "Hi, Rob. When can I sign up a contract with Eloff Racing.
Sorry, my headphones have gone down.
Now you don't have to answer it you don't have to answer it, but you can
You know what?
send him an
You know
email.
what? He's actually got a key for the garage, and whenever he needs something, he said, "I'm going to the garage. I need something." So what's ERA Racing? You know, it's our stuff is always there for virtually everybody at the circuit. We like that.
Yeah. Byron, is another comment after this, a couple after that as well.
Yeah, there's a couple after that, but he follows it up, DJ, of course. Meneer Rob Eloff, a legend and gentleman, echoing also those sentiments over there as well.
Thank you.
And here is one for you, Abdul, earlier on talking about the Barber Dodge cars. Richard Carr says, I like how Abdul says the cars were detuned to justify his slow lap times.
Wow, tell Richard, my 1300 was bloody faster than those cars down the straight. Like your foot's flat down on the Dodge and they're going nowhere. They have a huge amount of torque, I remember. They have a huge amount of
Abdul,
torque.
I know you're too worried you're going to break it. That's the only thing over there. You don't want to break anything that's expensive.
But it was a good experience, I must be honest. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was like, it's very different to a car. They're very, I don't know. They're just different. But anyhow.
I know, am I correct in saying, I think Jackie Schechter raced those in the US or something like that at a particular stage, because they're big in the US. They brought them down here and they did some corporate racing with them. And I think the corporate racing was more where the guys and girls would just go and do basically a few formation laps.
Yes,
not really doing any hardcore racing.
Jackie did race them, but not those particular ones. They had an older version which didn't have the Dodge V6 engine in. He raced before they introduced the Dodge at the Skip Barber Dodge series. I actually raced the Dodges for, I think, 3 years, Rob. We didn't, Abdul, we did 1 minute 14s or 1 minute 15s with the Dodge. So, and it wasn't properly set up. So what was your lap time, Abdul?
No, they didn't take a lap time because it was, I remember Junaid was there and it was some type of not a promo, but you could like book the day and a couple of guys were driving and we had to drive behind him and I was a bit irritated because I wanted to go faster. But I mean, one day I'll come and drive a proper single seater there with you, Ashfaak. I promise.
Well, all that happened when you guys did the corporate events. We altered the timing quite a lot, so the car couldn't really cool. So that's what we did then. Yeah.
And the throttle wouldn't open up full.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Absolutely.
But you know,
you
know, from a business point of view, you don't want a car that's going to gallop 100% of the time. It's going to cost you money. And Doug McDonald brought them in for that specific purpose. So people can have that experience without it being too dangerous. I would think I would have probably done the same. So, you know, a lot of people that got in the cars were newcomers to the sport. So you wouldn't want them to have all that power, I would think. And a lot of people enjoyed it and loved it, and it was great. I mean, the fact that your stopwatch battery went flat because you were so slow, well, you know. So coming back to the single seaters, I think it's a very, you know, I mean, I remember from Killarney days, you know, when the single seaters come on, the guys are turning around. They're going to do the braai now when the single seaters come, and I think it's actually so very unfair because, in my opinion, like I said, I've never raced a single seater, but at the end of the day, the top formula in the world is a single seater, and just a big single seater. But so to me, I would have loved, especially the spectators and the people, to actually give the single seaters much more respect than what they actually had, because I knew Ash for a long time. I know him for a long time, so I kind of knew how tricky it was to drive a car like that, you know, compared to a tin top, and how much goes into setting up a car like that, and how quick they really are, because you don't realize how quick those cars are until you actually see the lap times. So, Rob. So, if I may come in here, I was talking to Paul Simon today, and we were actually talking about how many guys, you know, the nano grey car of ours, a Formula Ford, the one that you see, number 4. The
Yeah,
one
yeah,
that
The
yeah,
one
Greg
that
raced.
I raced the last
yeah,
race.
yeah.
You know how many guys have raced that same car? Ash, you want to come in here? How
Yes.
many guys
Yeah, look,
and what's happened to those guys that actually raced that same car?
that's the car Rob and I started off with as ERA Racing. Uh, so I
Our
raced the
first
car, but prior to that, that car was driven by the first guy ever to drive that car was Mark Lead, who became South African champion with that car. And then it went to Tevin Tom, and then I drove it. And then after me driving it, we put Aaron's Falloon in there. We put uh, a few other guys.
also
We put Paul Simon in there. We put Kwesi Veyers in there as well. You
as
know,
a
and
training course for a year.
so Kwesi Veyers, he became the Polo Cup champion
Yeah,
a couple of years ago, and he came out of stock cars,
yeah,
and we put him in a single seater just to refine. He's I mean, a stock car driver only knows one way, and that's sideways and whatever. So that car has been through a lot of hands, and Kwesi Veyers actually became a Polo Cup, National Polo Cup champion. And then we put Paul Simon in there, and he became GTI Challenge champion after driving that car as well. So, uh, you know, if you want to cut your teeth in motorsport and refine your driving, obviously a formula, like I mentioned on the previous interview, that's where you cut your teeth in driving, and when you can measure your performance, because uh, those cars are so unforgiving sometimes. So you've got to be very precise in what you do, how you brake, how you come off the brakes, how you accelerate, how much steering input you put in, and your change, and you got to be studying what you're doing all the time, and it's very difficult to do it consciously. Of course, at the first go in that car, you need to actually program yourself, and you need someone to teach you or guide you on what to do in order to make uh, progress and understand what you're doing, because things happen so quick in that car before you can think it's over. That's the thing. So yeah, that Formula Ford, uh, I drove it now, I think a few weeks ago for the first time after 19 years. uh, so it was fun. Although it made me work a bit. I was racing against two cars in Class B that were much quicker than I was on the straight, so I had to work. But that's the beauty of Formula Ford. And if you look at at, at racing, for anybody that wants to aspire to becoming a Formula One driver, you've got to start. It's like building a house. Your foundation's got to be good. So obviously, karting is where you come in. You've got to build a good foundation in karting for 3, 4, 5 years, and then you get into single seater. Of course, uh, Formula Ford, and then you go to wing cars like Formula 3 and Formula 2 until you can get to Formula 1. And of course, there's a whole lot of other formulas in single seater that can groom you. But to cut your teeth and to understand how good you want to be and you need to be, you know, just a brief history. When motor racing started in the 1930s, everybody just focused on horsepower, and I would say from the 1930s to the 1950s or 60s, it was just horsepower, horsepower, and horsepower. And then came the 60s, where you had engineers like Colin Chapman, the founder of Lotus. They decided, okay, look, I think horsepower is not the way to go. I think we need to focus on chassis. I think we need to focus on brakes and on suspension and tires. you know. And so from the 60s all the way to the 70s and 80s, that was the focus. I mean, Colin Chapman came with a car, with the first car with a mid-engine, and he just blew everybody away. And then from the 80s to the 90s, uh, it became the aerodynamic era, where the engineers started focusing on aerodynamics, you know. And after the 90s, now 2000s, it became the computer or the electronics era. Uh, and so that's how motor racing evolved. But in all of those, you know, what people have missed is you've still got to get the driver to perform, you know. And to in motorsport they spend millions and millions and millions of rands on developing a car to go a half a second quicker or a second quicker, whereas if you work on a driver, you could get, you know, and ensure that he's at peak performance and getting the maximum out of the car. It's much cheaper, you know. Any top level of sport, you look at tennis, golf, basketball, whatever, all these top, football, they have coaches. In motorsport, it's one of the few professional sports where people don't focus on having a driver coach, you know. So I think you'll find where the guys that are actually using coaches or mentors as such are the guys that are performing, because the coach is actually getting them to focus on their performance and to extract the maximum out of them. The coach doesn't necessarily need to be the guy that has got more experience than the driver. Of course, wherever you are, like if you look at a beginner stage, a driver that's starting, of course, he needs to be taught how to do things. Then he needs to be instructed. Now, if you look at a Formula One driver, how are you going to teach and instruct a Formula One driver? You can't. He's got all the skill. What you need to do is you need to become a coach, where you need to direct what his problems are and allow him to find the solution, because he's got all the skill. He just needs to know where to tap in. So I think that's how motorsport is, and to be successful, that's what you need to do.
Okay. But Byron, before we go
Yeah.
to Rob, because I've got a couple of questions for Rob there.
Yes.
There's I see a couple of comments coming through on the side there.
Yes. First of all, just with regards to what Ash has been saying as well, you take an example like Lance Stroll, who's racing for Aston Martin in Formula One. His driver coach, his coach, is Juan Pablo Montoya, former 7-time Grand Prix winner. So it just shows you that the drivers are using ex-Grand Prix drivers. And a comment of a year has actually caught my attention with regards to what Ashley has been saying as well. Ash has a need for speed. This is from Divyesh Radia. Ash has a need for speed from a very young age and very knowledgeable around cars. And now Divyesh is also opening up a section now at a young age. Look at how young youngsters are actually getting. 4 or 5 years old, and we had a number of years ago Max Verstappen made his Grand Prix debut at 17. They actually had to write rules to prevent that from happening. So it just shows you getting started from a very young age is very vital, very integral to success.
Byron, I see there's one from Rodney Everson. Hi guys, Abdul. When you get into the opportunity to drive a single seater, please remember that the gear lever is on the right hand side of the car. That's old school, because the new single seaters have this DSG gearboxes, with the paddle shifts, I believe. So I don't know where he comes in that. But anyhow, I probably would remember that if it is an old car. Rob, let me get back to Rob here. I've come to your garages quite a bit, and I see some. I don't know. I can just call it the work of art. How important is race prep and building that car? Well, that car is perfect. I'm in awe whenever I come there. I learn so much. So take us through a process, like, when you're building a car and when you're going to race the car. Obviously, when you're building the car, it takes a period of time. I mean, you're still busy building the Audi Palmer. But when you actually take us through a little bit of the process when you're building the car from scratch, and then maybe we'll ask you the question later on, if, for the race prep specifically.
Okay, first of all, we never designed the car. The car was a abandoned project that never materialized to any racing. And we bought a whole lot of chassis and bits and pieces, and we put the whole package together. And when we got all the bits and pieces, I have a problem of trying to see how I can improve on things to my own detriment. Because I'm probably over the top, and my wife thinks that I don't want to finish the car because someone might buy it from me one day or something. So she's saying you're doing it on purpose. But to me, it's a learning curve thing. You don't wake up in the morning and you think you're clever, because you're not. With all of this, all forms of engineering, you learn as you go. And I mean, to me, it was. I've always looked at it as to how can I improve on it? Is it safe enough? So that's always been priority number one for me when I prepared Ashfaak's cars. I don't want to make a mistake, and I won't make a mistake, because there's no way he can pedal a car quickly if he's worried about me, whether I've got a hangover or I'm drunk at work, or I just don't give a nonsense about it. So it's very important for me as a person to do the best I possibly can, especially the prep on their cars. And getting back to the Audi, I have reached the point now where I've actually decided the car is finished. I've just got a couple of small little things. We had issues. It's a turbo-driven car, so turbo was new for me. And I'm not that mechanically minded where I worked on cars all my life. Turbocharged cars, I didn't. So a lot of things I had to find out. The main issue we had with the turbo was she couldn't drain the oil fast enough from the bearing assembly. So it would smoke a bit. Okay. So, that becomes a question. Do you leave it? No, you got to drain the oil. So we changed a whole lot of things. We restricted the amount of oil going into the bearing cluster. And then eventually I got hold of the guys from Porsche, and they said, no, your turbo is so low in the chassis, it can't drain through to the sump fast enough. It's backing up into the bearing clusters. So we had to put a 12-volt oil pump in the system, which I've done now. So that will then suck the oil out of the turbo housing, and it won't get pushed into the hot side of the turbo and out the back. So it's all those little small things you only wise up once you start running the thing and you start finding these things. At the moment, I've got a strange issue on my steering assembly where I've got two boost settings. One is a normal overtake boost button that you program to give you X amount extra boost if you want to overtake someone. And then there's another little blue light that you press. And when the blue light comes on, it tells the computer that the track conditions have changed. In other words, it might be wet. So your boost automatically gets reduced. So you won't make a mistake when you boost the car, then it's wet and oversteer the car or lose control of the car. And that blue light flickers now, and I don't know why. So I'm busy with that stupid little thing, finding out why this little LED keeps on flickering. Although everything works, it's just one of those small little things. So now I've got to go scratch and find one of those LEDs that I bought from Ashfaak that's flickering like that. But other than that, it's done.
And you can't take it back with you anymore.
Sorry?
You can't take the LED back because it's not a communicator anymore.
Yeah, now I'll buy it from somebody else now, I think. The car's already been set up. I've already set the car up and I've done all that. But as I was telling someone the other day, when you take a new project like that, you can't just bolt things together and, well, I don't do that. You don't bolt it together and hope for the best. You got to start with your engine management side. Is your engine fine? Are you running lean? You're running rich? Is your engine fine? Is your gearbox fine? Are the two of them working together? Are you shifting properly? And then you move over to other sections of the car, because that's now, you do that in the workshop. You do it on a dyno to make sure everything's fine. Is your coolants running properly? Your oil temperatures are running properly? All that. Once that's all done, then you can focus on the rest of the car, being the brake system. Then you go do a couple of laps in the pits, feel the brakes, feel it, check things, because you can't just take anything for granted and say, you know what, this is a piece of metal and it's going to go like the clappers. You can't take that chance. You can't. Am I being overcautious? Yes, I am. And at the end of the day, I've got a friend of mine that's going to drive that car, and I won't make a mistake with it. So we will test the car slowly but surely, go out for 1 or 2 laps, bring it back in, and go through things. We don't know everything. So, our experience is based on the knowledge we picked up from the Swift, which is the GTI, which is quite a fast car. And our car's chassis is based on the Swift, the design of it, with the rocket systems and everything. So it's all similar in design, and the chromoly and all the steel that we use is very similar. But still, you got to take one step at a time, and that's what we will do. So we just had some issues with the Ford now, so the Audi will go back to the track probably after the next race, and then we can start prepping the car.
I wonder who caused the issues with the Ford.
I wonder too.
Well, the problem is Graham went in for an operation the other day. He had a major op, and so he couldn't race the last race. And Ashfaak got into his car, but the problem I had, the problem I had with Ashfaak is he stripped half the car. I don't like the brakes. I don't like the seat. I don't like the gear shifter. I don't like the gearbox. We had to change the gears in the car. We had to cut the seat to pieces. We had to change the little thing at the back here to stop the helmet from bumping the car. We had to replace all the brakes on the car. So he stripped the whole car, and we put it back together.
You know what the problem is, Rob? I've known Ashfaak for a very long time. When I met him the first time, he didn't look exactly the same like what he looks like now, okay? He's picked up like 10 kilos, and that's why. There's nothing wrong with the car here. Come on, Ashfaak.
Well, what actually happened, he squashed the seat onto the gear shifting arm that comes across, and it was scraping against there. And he said, I've got this funny sound all the time. Meantime, it's his weight pushing the seat down. we had to chop a big hole in the seat.
Oh, my word.
But getting back to what Ash was saying earlier, there are certain things I don't do. I don't tighten wheel nuts. I don't do tire pressures, and I don't refuel a car.
Okay.
The driver does that. That's one of those things I've never done, and I won't do that. And to me, that's a peace of mind thing.
Absolutely.
If a wheel comes flying off, I tighten the wheel. It's my fault, being the driver. If I run out of fuel, which he did the other day, it's his fault. So there's certain things I don't do, and it's a good thing in a way. So your tire pressures, that's a management thing. Because once we go out with the tires and he comes back, we do heat tests on the tires to see exactly how the tire is performing. Because at the end of the day, forget about horsepower, forget about paint jobs, forget about anything else. It's what those 4 patches do on the track and how happy they are. And the happier those 4 patches are, the happier they are, the faster you'll go. Because I know people that might have double horsepower, but the car's all over the shaft. They can't put the power to the ground. It's a waste of time. So we manage the tires. Sometimes we've got tires that are a couple of years old, but we still manage them from a heat point of view to know how the car's performing. And that to me is the most important thing out of everything, is the tires will tell you what the car is doing.
Absolutely.
That's important to us. We do that a lot.
Yeah. Okay, before we go back to Ashfaak, Byron, do you have any comments that we have to get through there? I think there's a whole lot again. A couple of new ones.
Yes. I didn't know what you went through because I went off very briefly. I see Debbie Rickert says, give us the oldies, those guys who made the path for you. And I agree 100% for that as well. It's the guys that come from many, many decades, of working on cars that really, that brings the experience. And actually that opens up a question for me for Rob. I don't know if I'm going to say this right. Rob, do you think over the years, things have become very icy cold and clinical, especially in the way things are done in racing today? It's not as gritty and hands-on like it used to be. It's very based on computers. It's very based on the corporate environment.
Well, if you're getting back to computers and you're talking about our technology has changed, I'm not really in favor of this high-tech stuff. It's too much as far as I'm concerned. Most people today, you talk to oversteer, understeer, bump steer, toe steer, They've got a computer that does that. You know, Ayrton Senna and Prost and those guys would come back and say, tighten up the anti-roll bar at the back. And everybody knew what it was because he understood the mechanics behind it. Today, they change the diff settings. Oh, they come on the radio, I need more power, I need more power. Come on, do me a favor, drive the car properly. You're overdriving the car. Oh, the front tire, the car's pushing. And the engineer comes back and says, just wait a minute, the tires will warm up. I mean, do me a favor. Where does that come from? So I still believe that there is a place for people to learn the mechanical side of what they're driving. And to me, that to me is if you teach someone something like that, you've achieved something. You know, just to go quick and you're lucky because you're going quick is not good enough for me. We used to do a lot of things with Ashfaak. I used to change the setting on the car, and then you'd go out and come back and say the car's going out at the back. And I said, but why is that? He said, because the car's darting all over the place when I touch the brakes. He's learned something.
Yeah.
Or I'd take the car and you'd go for lunch and I'd lift the car's nose up. You'd come back and say, the car's pushing all over the place. I can't drive the car. I said, well, here's a tape measure. And you go, check. Oh, you changed the ride out of the car. He's learned something. And those are the things that are maybe just because of my age. It's just, those are the mechanical things that I would miss in motorsport, which I feel should be passed on to people, especially the youngsters. Because it's so interesting when I have young guys coming into the garage and they say, ooh, what does this do when you adjust this? And they're so interested in it. A lot of youngsters don't want to play with computers and set this, and they want to understand the mechanics behind it. And they want to know, how do you lift the nose of the car? And how do you do this? And how do you do the toe of the car? And I get a lot of guys that come into the garage and ask these questions. I mean, I even get people coming there in the evening, making appointments to come and show their sons who want to study mechanical engineering, our basic Formula 4 that we got. And they're fascinated by it. They don't want the computers, I think. And it'll be a waste if that side of it had to be lost. Because it's a conversational thing. I mean, I used to go into the bar and talk to the guys, and they say, "Oh, you guys," they call us the Braai race or something, you know, as you said earlier. And I'd say to the guy, "Well, why don't you jump into my single seater and do the lap time my driver's doing, and my driver will get into your turn top, and let's see what times they're doing." And none of them would ever take me on that.
Yeah.
Because I know the skills that you hone in a single seater, because that thing. It's not a toy. And if people ever think it's a toy, they can gladly come, jump in that car and try it. I mean, Ashfaak got into a Witzenberg V8 a couple of years back. Never sat in the car, ever. Never driven a car, ever. A friend of mine had a car and he brought it down to Cape Town. He was flying in and he phoned me and said, "Rob, I've got a brake issue. Have you got someone who can take the car out?" I said, "Yeah, Ashwood." I phoned Ash. I said, "Where are you?" He said, "I'm here somewhere." I said, "Go get your overall and come across the new pits." He came in there. I said, "Right, this is the story. Take this car out." He said, "What?" I said, "Get in the car, take it out, and just feel the brakes." And a couple of guys approached Ashfaak afterwards, and they couldn't believe that he never drove that car before. And I'm saying it's because of his single-seater background.
Absolutely.
He can feel the car. He
Absolutely.
can feel it. And you know, like I said earlier in the program, if you haven't got that feel, you don't become a good driver, in my opinion. That's why I'm not a good driver. I can't feel the thing. I just feel it vibrating. There's something loose somewhere. Where guys like Ashfaak and a lot of other guys can feel that car and they drive around that feel.
You know, Rob, it reminds me of a story. If you look at today's, let's just, for example, take it in the world out there. So you take your car to the agents to say whatever, you had a BMW, and the guy, you come into BMW and the guy puts it on the computer, on the machine, right, to the diagnostic machine. And then it gives you a whole lot of different code reasons, and then he says you've got to replace 5 things. And at the end of the day, it wasn't actually the 5 things, it was the plug, it was loose. And you know what's the difference is that there are no more mechanics out there, they're all technicians nowadays. They just replace with new parts. And I kind of think you're right, because they were not taught the actual mechanics of how things and why things do, why and how things work. And it's kind of becoming a problem in motorsport. Byron, just before we go to Ashfaak, I got a question for both of them, but there's a couple of comments that you have to get through here, new comments I see here.
I just see one from Dave Hawkins that just came down. I put it on screen. Dave Hawkins, a very well-known car builder and racer at Killarney for many years, and his comment of his is youngsters don't like working on cars anymore. And the thing is, this begs a question from me. You get a lot of kids, in my opinion, they get into cars. They don't know much about the technical side, and I'm not talking about knowing the simple stuff. Just they get in, they race the car, they leave it to the mechanics and the engineers to work everything out, and then what happens is the engineer will just tell them, well, how do you feel in the car? Just tell me if the car is turning in, if the back end is stepping out. So it's changed, in my opinion, Rob. I don't know what you're shaking your head over there. What's your opinion on that?
You know, I've had people come in sometimes and say, "Oh, there's something wrong with the motor. I'm losing power. And that's not Ashfaak. Other guys have driven the car. And I said, I know what it is. Go have lunch. Guy comes back. I said, I sorted the problem out. The guy comes out. He said, the car's fantastic. What did you do to the car? Nothing. It's in your head. I've had the guys come with brakes. The car's brakes aren't good. The brakes aren't good. Go have lunch. Come back. Sorted the brakes out. Guy come back. Brakes are fantastic. You got to be able to sit with the car as a driver. You can't just, as you just said earlier, you can't just expect to jump in the car, go pedal the thing, come back and go get your trophy, dancing balls and balloons and stuff. To me, that doesn't work if you want to be a complete driver. You want to be a complete driver. What worked before in the old days, and I'm talking about the old days, I'm 65 years old, I'm really old. What used to happen, Daddy used to support and put the money into it, and the son used to drive. And there was a lot of guys, Flip Foucher and his old man, Bobby Hyman and his dad, Johan Fourie and his father. There were a lot of father figures involved there. You had this, and the guys would pedal, and the father would get the technical guys to work on the car and support it financially. So that does work. So for anybody on their own, it can be difficult. I mean, I've had a lot of people who are architects and doctors and lawyers that want to get involved with our form of racing. And it's overwhelming for them because they got to hire people to do everything for them.
Absolutely.
And that's not right, because you should have someone that you team up with and say, right, let's take a chair, sit down there and discuss the problem. What's the car doing? Write it down. Let's work it out. Let's read the books, find out things and work together as a team. Because at the end of the day, a driver is not a complete driver. And I just say that because I just feel that way without the right technical support. You've got to have someone that backs you to cover you, and you work it out together. And that does make a difference. I mean, when we started with the GTI, I mean, Ash and I were coming back from we were out in Strand one night. We came home 4 o'clock in the morning or so, I think. And we said, gee, wouldn't it be great to own a GTI? Because that was like the car to have. And a couple of months later, we bought one. And that was like a really fantastic project for us. Scary, because this was a mean machine. These were mean cars. It was a wing car. It got massive slicks on it. Got fancy pumps and all that stuff. But, you know, we worked it. We blew a lot of motors up for the first year. I've got a lot of rods in my workshop here and bent pieces. we had this policy. We said, you know what? We're not engine builders. We're not. But we're going to work it. We'll work it. You ask questions and this one, from Dave Ingle to this guy and that guy, we found out, and we built our engines and blew them up, and eventually we were getting fantastic power out of the car. And we both enjoyed that. That was fantastic. You know, and you know, the guys all knew what we were up to. They knew we were battling. And some of the guys are not always that helpful. You know, some guys, they keep things to themselves because they want the trophies. But we worked it. And we succeeded in that. And eventually we got Ash doing 1 minute 14s in the GTI. And those were good times. And those were old tires because we couldn't afford new stuff. But I always felt you don't have to have new rubber every time you go out. You know, who you're competing with. So that's the way I see it. You know, we had a great time going through that learning curve. And we made a lot of mistakes, but I mean, you have to make the mistakes to learn. And if you're not making mistakes, but you got to team up with someone. You've got to team up with someone, whether it's your brother or aunt or uncle or whatever. It does make a difference. It really makes a difference.
Okay.
I mean, I'm still waiting for Ashfaak got all the trophies. He promised me the dancing girls and balloons, and I've seen nothing.
Ashfaak, here's a question for you. Actually, two questions in one from Richard Carr. How do you guys see the current Libre class progressing? And in the same breath, is karting always a good feeder class into main circuit racing?
Yes, I mean, obviously age dependent. I think if you're very young, it's good to get started in karting, and if you can't, if you're not that young, and I think karting has also gotten quite expensive these days. You know, the next best thing after not being able to do karting is probably to get yourself into some racing school or something, or get someone to coach you or teach you, just to get you up to standard before you can come into single seaters or main circuit racing. And Richard Carr's question was, how do we see Formula Libre?
Yeah.
It's certainly not so great if Richard Carr is not on track. But other than that, I think there's a great future for Formula Libre. The fields are surprisingly at this stage. The fields are growing quite steadily. I think the last race we had about 16 or 17 cars in these tough economic times. You know, so. There's a great battle up front with the Formula Volkswagens. In fact, every class A, Class B, Class C with the Vs, they're having great dices, great battles. So I think people are finally beginning to open up their eyes and realizing what value single-seater racing is in motorsport as a whole. You know, to hone your skills, to learn about cars, to understand the mechanics, and I think it's real good that it's going the way it is. And like I said in my previous interview with you guys, Abdul, like Formula V is probably the cheapest form of racing at the moment. You know, so really, and you're going to have so much of fun. It's the best fun you're going to have with your clothes on.
Okay, you haven't driven a Gymkhana car yet, Ash, okay? So don't talk about the cheapest form of motorsport. I'm just teasing you. I'm always taking a mix out with you. Well, in a Gymkhana car, you can even take your clothes off. It won't be a problem. So, I mean...
True. Very true.
Pardon me, just
but
one...
I mean, look, Gymkhanas are great. Gymkhana is actually also a great place to start. But, you know, for anybody wanting to progress to circuit racing. And again, what single-seater racing is and what Gymkhana is, it's like completely the opposite disciplines of motorsport. So both very exciting. I mean, I look. In fact, when we did the last test at Northlink College, I was just looking at Blaze with that 350Z and Rafiq with the Mini Cooper, and I just looked at it and I said, "Gee, these guys have got car control, like amazing car control." You know, so but again, it's used in a different form, and of course, single-seater doesn't look the part, but it's quite high speed, you know. So
absolutely.
Is that why they banned you from? That's why they banned you from drags. Remember?
I never dragged in my life. The only drag I did was a cigarette.
You dragged a single-seater.
No, Ashfaak, you were. No, you were a drag queen once. I remember.
Yes. You were my sidekick, Abdul.
Someone dragged. I think it was Aaron's who dragged our Formula Ford at drags one day.
Oh my word!
Yes,
it was him, and they said he can't come back again. There was something else, some technical things. But it was him. I'm almost sure it was him.
You know the one thing I didn't mention about the single seater is it's such a responsive car, and direct. When you accelerate, the car just accelerates. You know, it can take your breath away. When you brake, you can literally, I mean, especially with the GTIs and things, you can feel your eyeballs moving. You know, when you
Yeah.
brake in on the limit, and you just touch the steering wheel, and the single seater will turn. You know, so you got to be wide awake for the responses that you get out of a single seater. Uh, and I think that's the exciting bit when you're in the cockpit, to get all that feel. It's just amazing, you know. Especially talking about the GTI, I think that was the most fun car, where we took a back of the grid car and we made it a winning car, uh, thanks to the expertise of Rob. I used to just sit on the chair and watch. But with the Formula GTI, like I'll use Kilani as an example. Malmesbury, it's probably the fastest corner on the racetrack. You know, your brain is telling you that there's no way this car is going to take that corner at this speed. You know, and you got to literally fool your brain, and tell because your right foot also has a mind of its own. All of a sudden, if you're in the middle of a corner, the right foot comes off, and you wonder why. You know, so you got to literally do that, and fool your brain and say this car is going to make it, and crunch your teeth and go through the corner. I think Rob, remember they did a speed trap with us once, just on the exit of Malmesbury, with the Formula GTI on exit in third gear. They clocked that Formula GTI just on the exit of Malmesbury at 191 k's an hour.
Exit.
And just on the exit of the corner.
Before Owen Ashley.
Before Owen Ashley, we were doing
That
191.
That is ridiculously fast.
You know, so for me, obviously coming from a Formula Ford, no wings, and into a Formula GTI, that wings make such a difference. So I had to again relearn a whole lot of things to do that kind of thing. So the cornering speeds in the Formula GTI were just on a different level. You know, it was just amazing. So so that's why talking about a single seater, that's the kind of things you go through. Like when they talk about G-forces, there are things like G-forces, and you'll experience them in a single seater. I mean, this last Formula One race, Max Verstappen's crash, measured at 51 Gs when the point of impact. You know, so single seater is not a toy.
Absolutely.
But it teaches you so much.
So wonder they don't run G suits in Formula One.
I just wanna before I talk to Rob here, Byron, I think you must address that comment from Nishad quickly.
Yes, Nishad Marutka, as Ash was a hooligan behind the wheel of anything. Formula Ford, go-kart, you name it. Don't be fooled by his smile. Great guy.
Well, we still want to get Nishad's dad on the program. The last time he was a bit ill, because he was a legend rally driver. I mean, probably one of the few people that actually privateer that could actually beat the factory teams at their own game. And I think 1 year I remember his dad winning the Western Province Rally Championship here against the likes of people like Serge Damso, who drove for the Toyota dealer team at that time. So Nishad, you better get your dad warmed up there so we can talk to him soon.
And I think Nishad himself is quite a hooligan. I think he's also won a regional rally championship, if I'm not mistaken. So don't be fooled by his smile.
Well, then we got to get them both on the program. So maybe we should do that. Rob, I've got an interesting question for you. So, you know, this thing about wings and no wings, and I remember in Clubman's years ago, I think I stopped racing clubbins that time because there was a lot of stuff happening in clubbins. Where you had to have FIA approved seat belts, and it was the seat belts had expiry dates, and it was becoming ridiculously expensive to drive race cars. Um, this fight about the wings and the non-wings. There was a time when guys wanted to put wings on their clubman cars, who was like doing 150 k's down the back straight. I mean, wouldn't just take us through that kind of issues. Wings, why no wings? What does it do? What doesn't it do? Those type of things.
It's cool.
Yeah,
That's
true. Yeah.
Look, a wing is something that's going to obviously get into the airstream, and it has to have some sort of characteristics as far as slowing you down and pushing you down. It has to do that. I mean, that's what it's designed to do. You want it to force your tires onto the ground, and you got more grip, and you got more control, and whatever. But there's a balance. You don't want to have a massive wing on the back of the car, and the car's pushing all over the side. You don't know where it goes with the front wheels. Don't know what they do with themselves. So I wouldn't just slap wings on there for because it looks cool. Maybe I would because it looks cool, but it's got to be there for a reason, and it's got to be a calculated reason and a feedback reason, where a driver would come back and say, we actually put the wing on the back of this car, and the front is extremely loose. You know what you've done? You force the back of the car down, which is maybe what you want because you got horsepower, but now you've got no control of the car. So, it's a completely different subject when it comes to aerodynamics and fluid dynamics and stuff like that. It's a process of experimenting and testing and checking, and just going to one of these car shops and just bolting on a wing or something. You got to know what you're going to be in for, because you're affecting something now. You've got this downforce, whether it's in the front or in the back or on the top of the roof or whatever. It's going to affect the car. And in most cases, in my opinion, that I've seen, most cars are underpowered anyway to drive that. I mean, we took a wing one day and put it on a Formula 4 Kent car. A Kent, single Kent, put a wing on the thing. It lasted 2 laps, it burnt the clutch out. Remember Werner Smith's car? Was it Smith's car?
Yeah.
Because there was so much load on the poor car because of this wing assembly. And some guys do it and they have results, which is fantastic because they probably know what they're doing. But I wouldn't just bolt it on for no reason. I mean, I'm busy with this. We're busy with this radical that we're busy with now, and that's also got a nice wing assembly on the side and everything. But for some reason, there's just way too much grip in the front, and the tires overheat on the car, so they don't use it. Or that's what they said. The reason why they don't use it. So a wing is there because it's creating a lot of pressure. So one has to be careful when you do that. You got to do your homework.
And also a circuit like Killarney. Look, a wing is obviously going to slow you down on the straight anyway. So if you look at a circuit like Killarney, you've only really got one corner where a wing would really matter, and that's Malmesbury. The other corners are all slow corners, so you're more dependent on mechanical grip than aerodynamic grip. So it's only one corner at Killarney where aerodynamic grip is needed. So there's a compromise and there's a decision to be made. How much time are you going to gain with the wing, or how much time are you going to gain with no wing? So you need to work that out, I think.
So just a technical question, Ash and Rob. So the rear wing is designed to keep the rear wheels downforce. Am I correct? Then you have a front wing as well.
Yes. Yeah. You get wings. You get those little wings on the side of the mudguards, and that also help push the car down. And there's things under the car. It comes through the radiators, and they push the car down underneath the car. Little splitters underneath the front of the car. It gets very technical, but there are things that a lot of the top racing teams they use that. They get the air from the front of the car, and it actually forces the front down and the back down with it. But those are special wind tunnel programs that these guys run. It's not just like I say. For me, it's not that simple. I've experienced a lot of things like our GTI. that wing you had to run at a certain degree angle, or else that car was all over the place. 17 degrees on the third element was perfect for that car. And the reason why I say that is because we've gone from every single angle you can think of.
Yeah.
And 17 degrees on that third element right at the back there was perfect for that. It's the GTI.
Okay.
And like I say, it's a process. You can't just go and bolt the thing on. You've got to know what angle you're running. You know, you don't just bolt the thing on. And,
You know, the GTI also had an upgraded bodywork, the front, the nose, and things like that. And I preferred the old bodywork to the new bodywork. To me, the new bodywork just gave too much understeer, which I didn't like. I like the front of the car to talk to me. The back can do whatever it wants, you know. So it's a lot. It takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of testing and experimenting to do that. Yet, I mean, the new, like as an example in the GTI, the new bodywork was supposed to be better. You know,
it just looked
and
good. It looked better.
I found the older bodywork to be better than the new bodywork. In fact, we ran at that time, Rob. We ran 2 GTIs. I drove one, and Aaron drove one. He drove the new bodywork. I drove the old aerodynamic package, and we were still quicker with the old aerodynamic package than him in the new aerodynamic package. So there's a fine line.
It's very interesting, eh? We don't have, well, we over time, but it's an interesting question. You know, I always find that the setups on the single seaters, the suspension setups, the alignment and the suspension, it always intrigues me. And are we going to come to Richard Carner and Dave Hawkins after this? Byron, there's some comments there, but the feedback from driver to race engineer, that is what makes you guys so good, because you know, it comes through your bum, into your spine, into your mouth, and you can convey that communication to Rob, who knows exactly what to turn, how many turns, and where to turn. So just take us through a couple of scenarios. So you go out in the Formula Ford and the car understeers, for example.
Okay. Normally, if we're going to start the season off, or every now and then we do setup on the car, we've got a base setting which we use, which we've used for years. So you start off with the base setting, and when we do the base setting, we do it together. I don't work on the car on my own, and I won't work on my own. We all got to do it together, and we use chalk. We write all over the floor, we write all over the tires, and we check every single corner of that car, from wheel weights to everything, and we discuss it based on the original specifications. We go through that whole car, everything, and like I say, we write all over the place, and we sit for hours and we adjust this car. And then, of course, when the guy goes out with the car and he tests the car, there could be a lot of changes. It could be the tires are very old, or it could be new tires. Now things have changed, or we got a larger guy in the car, or there's something that changed. And Ashfaak would then come back and say he's not happy with us. Now, just recently when he went out with the car, he had, I think, a pushing issue. Did you? It was pushing, wasn't it? No, it was oversteering. What was it doing? We changed the anti-roll bars on the car.
It was. Yeah, I felt the front was a bit too soft for my liking, and
So if the front was too soft, so what was the front doing when you were going into a corner?
So the back was coming out.
So basically, it wasn't allowing me to carry the speed I wanted to carry into the corner. You know, so and the back was a bit too loose. So what we did was, because you're so limited with time, we just stiffened the front up, and that allowed me to, in the second race, to be more confident in the corners, to take more speed into the corners. And normally you go too stiff on the front will just wash away. But obviously my driving style, I've got a slightly different driving style to most people. I'm abnormal like that, Abdul.
No.
See, what you want to try and do is get the car neutral as possible. You know, some people like a car that pushes, some people like a car that oversteers. And ideally you want a car that's pretty neutral. So when you go into the corner, on average going to the corner, because there's different types of cornering. Are you going too fast, or the corner entrance or exit? So you want the car to be as neutral as possible. And the last thing you want is for a car to snap on you, a snap oversteer situation. Because I always found the snap oversteer was, that's it, my day's done. Because I didn't even see it coming, because it was one of the things that was just gone.
Yes.
And so what Ashfaak was experiencing there was the car wanted to throw itself away at the back, wanted to loosen, because as the chassis was rolling, the tire said, hold on, I can't keep up with you. And the chassis said, well, you're coming with me. So what happened? Now your slip angles increase. So now your tire. So what he did is he stiffened up the front. So the front said, all right, the four of us will work together as partners. And then what to do, as the chassis rolled, the slip angle of the front tires and the rear tires were very similar. So the car became more neutral, instead of them being on completely different planets. And that's generally what you do with the anti-roll bars. You try and get the car as neutral as possible, and then based on your driving style, you can force a push car. You can drive it too fast, or you can use too much power and do so. So that's the driving thing, but that the drivers normally work out. But we try and get the car as neutral as possible.
Okay, Byron, comments I see there.
Yeah, two big comments of I displayed the first one earlier on Dave Hawkins with his opinion on a wing at the back of a front-wheel drive car. He says wing at the back of a front-wheel drive car allows you to dial in more rear brakes. Now, I know that's a very controversial subject, because a very big argument about having a rear wing at the back, of course, a rear wing on the car of a front-wheel drive. So, most people have argued about that.
Fortunately, single seaters are not front-wheel drive, so I
Well,
can't argue with that.
I think we were talking about tin tops earlier on. I think that doesn't apply there.
But talking about it and with Dave with tin tops, when I raced the GTI Challenge, I mean, now this is also a scenario I've never ever experienced. I went racing GTI Challenge, and I was 2 seconds off the pace, and I had brand new tires on. The car was set up, and I couldn't understand why I was 2 seconds off the pace. I mean, new rubber, and trying to figure it out. Eventually, walking around, I realized that everybody uses very, very old tires at the back of the GTI Challenge, car. And then when I tried that old tires at the back of the car, instantly the car, was sliding quite a bit at the back, and immediately we went 2 seconds quicker with older tires at the back. So front wheel cars still puzzle me a little. I mean, I've never experienced that way. You rear wheel drive and wrong wheel drive.
Hey, I like my wrong wheel drive. Don't be too hard on that.
Yeah. How are you, Mr. Twist? I haven't seen
so
you in ages.
it's racing is you learn so much. I mean, who would expect that if you put older tires at the back, you'll go 2 seconds a lap quicker? And I just had too much grip in this GTI Challenge car, and I couldn't go quicker.
You know what, Ashfaak? It actually reminds me of my Gymkhana car. When I started off, because I just had all four to slicks, and it was just not working because the arse wouldn't come around. And then I put on semis, and it was what I wanted. But it's not going to work on the circuit. It's just crazy. I mean, there's so much variables.
Amazing.
So, you know what? We can go on and talk forever. We're on 16 minutes past 9 already. Byron, there's just one comment from Richard Carr. I just want you to maybe Rob can have a look at that quickly and just talk about it, and then we can wrap up.
Carr says, with the current WPMC Formula Libre, should the classes be split by lap times, or should it be based on an overall car performance?
Look, it doesn't really worry me too much. As long as we got the numbers there, it's a driver thing. And at the end of the day, but what makes the drivers happy and things like that, I don't really always during a meeting try and engage, because I'm not on the circuit. It doesn't affect me as a non-driver. So it's normally a driver thing. So something like that, if you had the numbers, you can split things up. If you haven't got the numbers, you've got to go by performance, I would say. But it's not my call, and I won't make a call on that. Ashfaak, you would probably, from a driver perspective, have more input in that.
Yeah, I'm not, as from a driver perspective, I'm not really in favor of time classes, because I mean, I'll be driving a Toyota Tez. Abdul will come with a Toyota Runex 2-liter, and he's in the same class as I am because we're doing the same lap times. I'm quicker in the corners, but when we come to the straights, he just blows me away all the time. It's good for me, but it's not good for him. He's fooling himself, thinking that he's winning the class, but effectively, it's the car that's winning the class. So, personally, I prefer just flat out racing where you get the most out of yourself and the car. You know, when you have a car that's too fast, a lot of guys sandbag. So, what's the point of racing when you sandbag in every race? So of course, it's also difficult to police, like Formula Libra as it is right now, Class C with the Formula Vs. Of course, they all hopefully built according to national specifications. So they don't need a time class. It's just the car, the driver, in the racetrack, and you got to see who's the quickest. Now, the minute there's so many different variables in the other classes, it's difficult to police. So I suppose the easiest would be to have time classes in those classes. But personally, I'm not a guy that likes to race in a formula where there's time classes and time breakouts and things like that. To me, give me a very slow car, then maybe I'll race there.
You'll
But
race.
to have the fast, to have a fast car and that's capable of doing a class A time, but you're driving in class B, what's the point? So yeah, that's from a driver's perspective. But I suppose everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
I mean, I see, yeah, Rob, you were saying?
Sorry, the main thing the way I see it at the moment, the way motorsport is and the way Libra is at the moment, and Libra is doing very well. We need chassis. We need the more cars we can get, the easier we can make it for people to get onto the circuit, and the less complicated as far as regulations are concerned, the better from where I'm sitting. From a driver's perspective, maybe not, but I just want to see more chassis. If I can have 30 cars on the track and they all different shapes and sizes, as long as they're open wheel, single seaters, I'll be quite happy, because the formula will grow, and eventually when you have the numbers, you can start changing things, maybe, only when you got the numbers. At the moment, we just need every single chassis we can find. So we try and make it as simple as possible. And we've gone through this argument for 30 years. The main problem is, let's bring the chassis, and we'll invite anybody. Bring with a Formula One car, and I don't care if the car costs you 20 million and you're doing 1 minute 30s. Be my guest and join us. And then Ashfaak will complain afterwards. But he's worked on a Ferrari before anyway. You tell him about our P4 here, Ashfaak. P4 here.
No, actually, maybe you should, if we have time, you should talk about that one.
Well, I'm listening. How long will it take?
You know the
tell you.
Piper series that was here.
Excuse me?
You know the David Piper series that used to be here.
Yes, P4 Ferrari replica, the P4.
Yes. Max Wakefield and Robert Guinness owned that car. All right? Am I right or wrong? Yes. Max Wakefield owned it was a P4, P3, P4, Ash?
P4.
P4. They owned that car. And then when we were racing here, we took all our stuff out our garage and we made a hospitality area for them. Because we had all those garages down there, and we took all our cars out and we put it in containers and we painted the place out for them, and they put tables and chairs down there, and like I said, it was a hospitality suite for the Piper crew. And when they left that particular year, they asked if we would look after the Ferrari and do some work on the Ferrari, which we did for 6 months. And Dion Hubert tested the car for us while we were in the process of working and changing some aerodynamic stuff and cooling stuff on that car. And we actually had that car in our garage for 6 months.
Amazing.
And I
Absolutely
refused,
amazing.
And there's only about
I refused to start the car without the agent being there. And Dennis Dion Joubert there to race the car, to take the car for testing. Just from a liability point of view.
Absolutely.
I think there are only three P4s still around in the world at the moment. So that car is worth millions of dollars. Yeah.
And there was one in your garage that you worked on
So,
for 6
yeah.
months.
Yeah,
Amazing.
it was 6 months, and I still loaded
Yeah.
the thing in a container with the agent on the trailer and took it to the docks when it went to Ireland, and then they raced it there after that, and we haven't heard from them since. But that was a special time for us, where we had the honor of actually. It was one of those cars where you sit on a bucket and stare at it, and you don't know why you're doing it, because you're enjoying the.
Absolutely
the
I think if I recall, Rob and I were in the garage, when they were practicing and practice day and I think qualified, and we picked up a few things. And Rob spoke to them and said, we noticed that you guys are doing certain things. And we suggested a few things to them, their mechanics at that time. And we said, why don't you try these things? So they tried it, and then I spoke with Max Wakefield. Now, Max Wakefield is the grandson of the founder of Kestrel Oils. And
Okay.
Robert Guinness is the grandson of the Guinness, famous
beer.
Guinness
Yeah.
beer.
Yeah.
So I spoke with Max Wakefield, and I made a few suggestions to him, and they went out and immediately they were 2 seconds quicker with our suggestions. So
Amazing.
we were like the heroes, their heroes.
That's
So
why.
that's our.
That's why they left the car with us and asked us to do some work on the car.
And look how amazing that, because Ashfaak doesn't
Yeah.
drink beer, so he drank the castor oil, and Rob drank the Guinness beer. I mean, amazing. What can I say, Ashfaak? I just want to say hi to.
Yeah.
I just want to say hi to my old clubman's buddy there, Peter Twist. I remember those days when, if I remember correctly, Peter was driving a blue, a Mazda, if I'm not mistaken, or a Cadet. I can't remember what it was. I think it was a Mazda, 323 Mazda.
Wasn't
something.
it a charade? Wasn't
No.
it a charade?
I don't think he drove the Charade. They were. I think it was the blue. It was a blue Mazda, if I'm not mistaken. Or I remember his late dad, Graham. What a gentleman, absolute gentleman. And those are the old days. Those were the old days. Maybe Peter can send me a message on Messenger or something to tell me what kind of car it was. I'm sure it was a 323 Mazda. Check this. Baron, that comment you have to address.
Yes, definitely. Cedric Yapi, of course, a photographer, very well-known photographer around our gymkhanas in motorsport as well. Years ago, I sat in that very P4 at Killarney during practice for the 3-hour endurance race. I rode to Killarney on a bicycle in those days. Isn't that a magnificent story?
Oh, my word. That is true passion. Guys, we can talk the whole night, but it's 1.5 hours already. I mean, that's amazing. There's so much more we can talk about. Ash and Rob, we're going to definitely bring you guys on again. There's so much to discuss. You're never going to get to the end of it. And, Peter, 323. I remember that. 120. Look at this. It's right here. Amazing, Peter.
I've got lists of things that I was hoping we would touch on, but like you said, we're just not going to get around to everything. If I can just say something before we close.
Sure.
One thing about single-seaters, the guys over the years, and I've been doing this for so many years, and I've been on a committee for the last 30 years, it's a special bunch of guys. I'm not saying the others aren't, but the guys that we get up to a lot of mischief. We naughty people. We play games on each other. When we braai in the afternoon, we have a little scuttle and we make breakfast. Sharon makes breakfast for us. And the guys would come past and steal our bacon and steal our sausages. And then I would get water pistols and we'd ambush them. And we'd wait for them to come past and we'd spray them with cold water. So, a lot of stuff like that you don't see, you don't hear about. But that's part of enjoying your day. I want to come there, open the door, take a deep breath. I'm going to have a fantastic day, meet a lot of my friends, have a nice chat, enjoy the racing, and go home and be happy. And that's to me, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
I've got to enjoy the day. I don't want to go there. And my wife often said to me, you had a bad day because you're miserable. So we blew the engine up or we did something. But at the end of the day, that's what I don't play pool, I don't hang around in bars, and I don't play golf. This is what I do, and this is my enjoyment.
Exactly.
And I still enjoy it, and I love it. And meeting up with the guys, and I come there early in the morning, and I open the garage, and I look at my baby sitting in there, and have a nice cup of coffee, sweep the floor, pack everything nice and neat. It's my joy. To me, it's my joy.
Absolutely.
That's why I go out and deliberately dirty it.
Yes, I know that. You told me once before, Ash. No. He deliberately comes late. This is what he told me once. He deliberately comes late to cheese you off, and he packs everything near my car. So this is Ash, right? I'm telling you. Anyhow, guys, we definitely, Rob, keep that list, because as I'm sitting here, Ash, and we were still supposed to talk about how to be a better driver. Remember, Ashfaak, your lines, your braking points, those types of things.
Yeah.
You know what? We can do it at another time, and definitely that's another program. And Rob, with your list, because we just want to, there's a lot of stuff to discuss, and people out there are hungry for information. So just on a Gymkhana note, I must tell you guys, the next Gymkhana is on the 14th of August. August the 14th. And there's some very interesting developments happening with Gymkhana. One of them being a complete motorsport development program, whereby we're going to be using the Gymkhana, for starters, the Gymkhana part of the entry fee that the drivers pay to fund to fund bursaries for youth that are interested in developing their careers in the motor industry. So that's a huge thing, and we're going to be doing a joint venture with Northlink Colleges and an NPO called YQ for Hope, together with Witzenberg Motor Club. So that partnership is going to be absolutely awesome, and I know Rob is going to enjoy this, because we're not just talking about drivers here, because my belief is that motorsport development is not just about drivers. It's about the team that makes up the whole thing successful. And it's the engineer, it's the panel beater, it's the spray painter, it's the welder, it's the guy that changes the tires. That is all part of a successful racing team. And that's where we are going to do this partnership with, like I said, the Northlink Colleges, because that's their forte, that's the educational institution. And we're going to be from YQ for Hope and Witzenberg Motor Club through motorsport, which is Gymkhana for now. We're going to be funding bursaries to push those youngsters through. And that's exciting. That launch is going to take place on the 9th of August. That's obviously by invitation only. But it's exciting times for us in motorsport. And I think, you know what, if all the other disciplines of motorsport can follow suit, I think we're going to make some big changes in motorsport over the years, with helping people come through the ranks, not just as drivers, like I said, but as a complete team. And Rob, just maybe your thoughts and Ash's thoughts on that, and Byron's thoughts. Well, Byron's one of the people that kind of know what's happening, but maybe just the two of your guys' thoughts on that. You guys been in motorsports for a very long time. Just quickly to wrap up, your thoughts on that process?
Well, I think it's fantastic. And I mean, we from Ash and us, and I can speak for Ashfaak as well, whatever we can do, whether it's people coming into our garage and we're just having a chat about things and people showing an interest, our time is there. Anytime. I have a thing about don't waste my time type of thing. If you're serious about doing something, 100%. But if you want to come there and play on your cell phone and have a chat with your mates and stuff like that, it doesn't work for me. We've done it before, Ashfaak, you know that. To us it's serious as well, and we do it because it's important to us and we enjoy it. So the guys out there that want to come, what a pleasure. We'll entertain them at any time. But it's serious stuff. It's not a dual type thing. We do it properly.
Absolutely.
But just one thing before, so Ashfaak, I was talking to Ash this afternoon, and we were talking about it. The day what a race car driver does on race day, and film it. And you guys do what you want to with it. So Ash would come there one day with the 2 GoPros and film himself arriving there, opening the garage, doing his preparation, that whole story. Don't you think it'll be interesting, Ashfaak, that some ideas about that, and maybe something in the future where you could put it on your program as
Absolutely.
from setting up the car and discussing things and fighting and going for breakfast and going to fight with the clerk of the course and all that sort of stuff. I think it'd be quite interesting for the people out there that don't get involved with motorsport.
Absolutely. I think it's a brilliant idea. I think we've spoken about this before, Ashfaak.
Yes, we have.
Yes. So you must just do it and tell us when. And I'm sure Biden is going to say yes because he's a good guy and he knows that motorsport is in our blood.
Actually, what we could do is we could use Byron for commentary on that.
Absolutely, he's got a brilliant voice.
Yes, I think. Look, from a motorsport development thing, this thing that's come about, Abdul, it's brilliant. It's perfect. And I think something really good is going to come out of it, and it's going to put the fire under a lot of people's behinds to realize that Gymkhana is doing it. Why can't we do it? Normally it's just been like a window dressing thing. This is proper stuff. Well, the things Rob and I, but also that's a story for another day. We were busy with putting something like that together many years ago with Brian Smith. But I mean, you guys have actually gone out and done this. So I'm actually quite excited to do this. But now I just heard the 14th of August, Abdul. I'm actually on training that weekend. I don't know how to set the date.
What training are you on that weekend?
They training me how to be a good person.
Okay, just tell them whoever's training you that you are a good person. Just make sure you're at the Gymkhana because you're an integral part of that whole team setup there.
Yes, but I've actually I don't know how I think you'll have to change the date for the Gymkhana.
check up persuasive Ashfaakis. We'll discuss that off the air.
We'll discuss that off air.
In closing, Biden, anything you want to just tell us about it quickly?
And I love it, definitely.
Okay, guys, thank you so much.
It's
Thanks
going to be awesome.
Absolutely. I just want to thank the viewers out there. I want to thank the viewers out there for watching, and obviously it's on the Facebook page and on YouTube channel as well. So just hit the subscribe button there, and you can always go look at it afterwards. Rob and Ashfaak, what can I say? I've known Ashfaak for a very, very long time. I know who you are, but I've kind of met you now. It's unbelievable the knowledge that comes out of the two of you. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know, from somewhere. But we're definitely going to have the both of you back on the program. Maybe talking about the list of stuff you have. Maybe Ashfaak can talk about the driver setup and stuff again. But thank you so much for giving up some of your time. And I mean, I really can't believe that you were actually camera shy. That's an absolute lie, Rob. I really don't believe that, because the information was absolutely awesome. I must be honest. And Ashfaak, from your side as well, people can take something away and they can learn from that. That's the most important. There's something they can use it for their good. So thank you very much, Baden, once again, my co-host. And
pleasure as always.
We'll chat to you guys soon. I think next week and Wednesday, Patrick them are having the Alfa Romeo Club. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting topic as well. Yeah. Okay, guys, so thank you so much, and have a good night's rest, and we'll chat to you guys soon, and thanks so much. Have a good
thanks
evening.
a lot for having us.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Okay, cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye.